Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm your host, PattSun, and today we're going to be taking a look at r/Surviving Infidelity. And I just wanted to let you guys know that this story took almost 2 years to get where we are now. So I hope you have a little bit of time because this is a very long one. I mean, come on, this story is over an hour long, so I highly suggest that you sit back, relax, hold on to your Dragon Balls, everybody, and we'll begin. On dodging the bullet a second time and being done for good. Posted by Reddit user ProudReading7203.
Wife and I have known each other for 8 years, married for 6. First of all, thank you for taking the time to read this, but also, please bear with me as I haven't slept properly in the last few days and my head's been spinning around like crazy. My wife went on this work trip abroad with a few coworkers. First couple of days, they were all staying at a hotel, and even though she had very busy days, she always FaceTimed me at the end of the day. Everything seemed fine. On the third day, they moved to a different location to work on a big project with other local coworkers. Day was stressful, so she didn't write me much throughout the day. She writes me 4h later, at around 11 p.m. saying that she's going to the sauna with her female friend she's supposedly sharing a room with. The sauna is in this compound where they're staying at, and it's something common to do in the country, except it's quite late for that, given the long day they had. She then writes me 2:30 later at 1:30 a.m. saying I'm going to sleep, write you when I get up, love you. And I write her back. No mention of being tired. No mention of not being able to do a call. No mention of what she had been doing for the last 2:30. It felt really distant, cold, and out of character, and I got this really bad gut feeling. For reasons I'll explain further down, I had a bad feeling the whole trip, but nothing that really tingled my spidey senses until now. So I had to find out what was up. She left her laptop at home which syncs messages, so I could see things happen in real time. She had a message thread with this guy. Last message she sent him was at the same time she wrote me last. And it was a single emoji, a heart with a band-aid. I'd never even seen that emoji before and have no clue what it means. I left the laptop open while I was getting ready for bed. And holy fuck, I see a message from my wife saying come to room 3. At this point my heart is racing like crazy. I'm shouting, I'm crying, I'm devastated because even though I had a bad feeling, my wife was the last person on earth I ever thought would do something like this. I've had a prior relationship where I was cheated on a couple of times, and I learned to recognize the type. My wife was the complete opposite, so I'm running through all these scenarios in my head. Maybe room 3 is something else and they're going to party with other people a bit more. Maybe he's going through some stuff and he needs to talk. Maybe she's asking K to come to her room for V. But why didn't V write K in the first place? What would K do with V with my wife in the room anyway? Is my wife even staying at the same room as V? She told me a week before she left she was, but they could have switched. While my mind is still racing, I see that K's message hasn't been delivered. Maybe he doesn't have battery. 1 hour later K writes going there. The message stays unread. So I'm thinking maybe she's asleep and he'll knock on the door and go back and write her back. But the message stays unread for the next 7 hours, during which I forced myself to stay awake because it's the only way I can see anything happen. And then, in real time, I see the whole thread get deleted. At this point, the few legitimate scenarios I was holding in my head completely vanish. 1 hour later, my wife writes another coworker saying she has K's phone and to let him know. K and my wife don't write each other the whole day. Now the reason why I had a bad feeling the whole trip was because a couple of weeks earlier, my wife, a friend, and I went out for drinks and met her coworkers. I had met a few of them prior, but not K. I heard of K in passing, and I don't think she even works directly with him, which made sense as to why I would always hear much more about the other coworkers. We go to this bar. We're dancing. K is holding something in his hand which my wife takes from him and puts in her pocket, in a teasing way. And that's when I had my first gut feeling. She's acting very differently towards this coworker versus everyone else. We all go outside. I'm talking to someone else, and she's talking to K. She's very close. She touches his arm for 2 seconds too long. A couple of minutes later they hug. I'm pissed because this whole week she had been overworked, going out with her coworkers, and showing little affection towards me, but she's doing it towards this guy. We go home, I say exactly that, and that I'm going to sleep in the sofa. She blows things out of proportion. How do you dare? Packs things in a backpack and says she's going to a hotel. It's too late. No hotel will check her in, so I say go ahead. She leaves, but I don't hear the door downstairs close. She left her iPad at home, where she's logged into Instagram. Not proud of it once again, but I had to see what's up. I see a thread with her making some plans for a drink with this other guy she hasn't seen in years, but it didn't seem that suspicious. And then I see that get deleted in real time, so I get really hung up on it, missing other threads being deleted that I didn't get a chance to read. Because I was drunk, I text her about these plans. She first says he only wants to see her friend. I told her that's a lie. Then she says they didn't really make plans. I told her I saw the messages. She keeps denying it, never saying that it's just a friend or something. Then she switches to how dare you doubt me again. And I'm so stressed at work. I'm sorry I'm not enough. I can't be everything to everyone. I tell her if I misunderstood something, that she can come upstairs and we can clear it up. She comes, but again doesn't clear or admit anything. And the convo is all about how she isn't enough. She was crying uncontrollably. I felt bad, so I went to sleep next to her. Because both of our weeks were quite busy, we don't talk about this again, but we make plans to do so when she comes back. Last couple of days before she left, we went on dates and had amazing sex. In the message thread with Kay, I could see some slightly flirty messages from both sides about her sleeping on his shoulder on the plane. Although since all coworkers spent a lot of time together in person, it makes sense that there's not a lot more in that thread. Yesterday, she got to the hotel, so I waited for her to write me, call me. I waited for half an hour. And I wrote her asking if she was still out because I'm going to be. She calls me saying she just got to her room. Her neck, all the way down to between her breasts, is red, like when we're making out, and my beard is short and it rubs on her skin. I ask her about it. She acts surprised like she didn't know, and tells me it was probably her scarf. But this is clearly on one side only and goes down further than a scarf would. I didn't want to press further because I can't let her know I'm onto her too much. We proceeded to talk for 1H, but she was a bit fussy, not like other days when she gets to the room and immediately starts getting ready for bed. It felt like she was delaying getting ready for bed, except for putting on pajamas. So I keep stalling, trying to see if Kay is going to write her, or vice versa. And then I ask her about the sauna. She says she barely went in because it was packed. Then I ask her other details and they don't seem to line up. I had been awake for 36 plus hours at this point, so I was recording the convo to make sense of it later. We ended the call. I finally went so sleep. Sleeping never felt so good. Woke up this morning. No messages from Kay or my wife to each other. She FaceTimes me a couple of hours later. Besides a quick check-in, she says I'll write you whenever I can. If I don't, it's because there's a lot happening, and it's hard balancing being here and being there. It's not because I'm doing something else that you might be thinking. If you made it till here, thank you, thank you, thank you. My head has been spinning round these last couple of days. There's so much I'm not sure of, but divorce has been on my mind constantly. We had plans to buy a house and have a baby next year. Even if nothing happened, she betrayed my trust by telling me she was going to sleep and then inviting Kay to her room. Even if that hadn't happened, she betrayed my trust by maintaining a closer relationship with Kay after I said I wasn't comfortable with that. She's risking her career and her relationship. And I can't really live the rest of my life looking at every single thing as a possible sign of cheating. She had 2 symmetrical spot bruises on her thighs that I only noticed a couple of days after she went out with her coworkers, that she couldn't explain, and I sure as hell didn't cause them, or feeling forced to snoop. But at the same time, I feel like this is all too weak as evidence for a divorce. Our accounts are separated, so it's not that simple. The car is in her name. I can't just threaten a divorce or discuss it with her because I'm afraid she'll move the money and I'll have to start from scratch. And ultimately I'm heartbroken because, damn, I love her so much. She is the love of my life, my soulmate. But I also feel like the person I love isn't there anymore. And all it took was a couple of days. I really don't know what to do next. What if I'm wrong? Edit. She's now being very flirtatious with me over text. She hasn't been like this in weeks. Edit 2. Forgot to mention she's been working from home since she joined the company in January, so she's only met her coworkers maybe a dozen times in person. Edit 3. There's no new apps purchased on the App Store that I can see, but something occurred to me. They both use Slack for work, which is much more convenient than starting to use a separate app. Edit 4. She called me again. She is back at the first location, staying at the hotel. Worked from the office all day. One of the first things she told me was her arm was bruised and she might have bruised it at the other location, but doesn't really know how. I couldn't see it on camera because it was too dark. She then said I'm all bruised up. Well, not all bruised up, just this bruise. Weird. Post was locked, so here's the update. Update. I found the smoking gun. While I was preparing to wrap up on her laptop, my wife sends a message to Kay. It starts with just work stuff, but somehow it sounded flirty and it could be deniable at the same time. I wait. I knew it was not going to remain just work because we had a call minutes prior and said goodnight and this was all too convenient. And then she initiates it. Wife, where's your book? Kay, is it there? Wife, maybe. Kay, you can deliver it in my room. Wife, bad idea. Kay, I said you can. Kay, I didn't know how good the idea was. Kay, the book is here already. Wife, glad you've got it already. Kay, unless you want to give other book. Wife, although I think your gum is here still. Wife, I only have mine and I need to read it first. Kay, yeah, it is. Kay, maybe I need some gum now. Wife, only if you're going to sleep and not cause any trouble. Kay, I'm going to sleep for sure. Wife, go get your gum. Kay, open the door. I'm fucking devastated. I know y'all warned me, but fuck. I didn't even have to wait. New update. Got a lawyer. He instructed me on what to say. She wrote me this morning. I had to delay my replies a bit as I was preparing my message. I think she sensed something was wrong given my non-replying because she changed her Instagram password and removed the WhatsApp link. I've sent her a message and email saying everything should be taken up with my lawyers. I've gone NC. Kay tried to call me. I've blocked him. She's calling my friends saying she doesn't know what prompted this, and a couple of her friends have asked me for more info. My lawyer advised me not to tell her the details, or anyone else until she goes talk to him. She's seeking compassion from everyone and pretending she's clueless. Edit 6. She's mentioning in every single email she won't be here tomorrow. This will kill her. She will die if I don't let her in tonight. Obviously, that's the last thing I can do, but I'm concerned about her thoughts. Edit 7. She's mentioned in another email, I haven't betrayed you, but I have been unfair and dishonest. Trickle truth. Also, this makes it a bit clearer that someone might have seen Kay go into her room. She might think that's all I know. Edit 8. I just had the hardest hour of my life. She supposedly had no battery on her phone, was emailing me with her percentage at every point, with slight suicide remarks, had to call the cops to check in on her, got to communicate with her friend, she booked her a hotel and Uber. She always saying that she'll only talk face to face. Last thing she said was she'll tell the truth to her family so I don't have to, but I still don't know what it is. Person shrugging. Edit 9. She made it to the hotel. She's now saying that everything I need to know is in the Notes app in her computer. I'm seriously considering if this is not all part of the game. But seriously, what the fuck? New update. She finally sent me an email with her version of facts. Let me preface this by saying that her friend called her and asked if there had been any messages with Kay, and my wife said no. Now, for the fun facts. There was one other instance with a guy Friday night where they danced, hugged, got really close, and he wanted to kiss her, but she says she said no, that she couldn't, and that she was married. Kay prefaced this saying no kissing or sex happened. Says she didn't look at Kay in this light previously, including the night when we all went out. Admits to having fallen asleep on his shoulder, not only on the plane, but also on the bus. I know she didn't initially sit with him, so she sought him out. However, she says we chose to sit next to each other on the bus, essentially shifting the blame to both and not just her. Admits to him having come to her room 3, but she says didn't hear him, and her roommate let him in. And then she woke up, felt him hug her, she told him to stop, her roommate turned on the lights and asked him to leave. She's at the very least lying about the sequence of events and who initiated the contact. She admitted about Kay coming to her room asking for his book. He asked his colleagues if anyone had space for his book earlier in the day, and she said yes. She says he went there after she messaged him saying she had his book. He lingered at the door. They hugged for way too long, and she'd pull away, and he'd pull her back in and she gave into it. Apart from the hugging, nothing else happened. She admitted about yet another night where he stayed longer. He came and sat on the bed this time. They talked, hugged again. Nothing happened after that. She knew he wanted something to happen and maybe she did too. He left after half an hour. He kissed her neck once when they hugged, but it's not the red mark because this was a different time and left not marks, and the red mark was truly from her scarf. She used his phone to call me, and he knows what's happening. She says these are the lines she's crossed in our entire relationship. She sees a pattern forming, that it is due to stress, and she needs to get help to learn to handle the stress. She hurt herself emotionally to handle stress. She says she deleted messages she sent to him to avoid raising suspicions, and that the only inappropriate one was him saying open the door, after she sent him a message asking where his book was, insinuating that she wanted him to come over. She changed her Instagram password because she was afraid of the other guy she met on Friday would message her something she couldn't easily explain. She says she didn't kiss or fuck or anything similar anyone at any point, but she engaged in flirting and it went too far. She says she needs help and compassion. She can't afford a hotel for a week. She says I might not believe she deserves it, but that she needs it right now. I don't know what to do, y'all. Edit 10. Y'all, I knew last night hadn't been the hardest it would get. She sent me a screen cap of the convo she had with Kay. Wife, he says he has proof we are sleeping together, which doesn't exist because we're not, so I don't know what the fuck happened. Kay, whatever proof he might have, it's not truth. I honestly don't who I did he got that proof, but as we know, that never happened. Wife, I don't think the truth matters anymore, but I do think someone gave him a reason to suspect something. Kay, off the truth matters. What proof would he have if nothing happened? Wife, no idea. Something that gave him the idea that something happened. I told him everything that did happen, but he doesn't believe me. Wife, I'm sorry you're involved in this. Just wanted to give you a heads up in case it comes your way. Kay, fuck, but nothing happened. I don't know how he would not believe you. I'm sorry that you're passing through this. She thinks I told her friend I had proof they fucked, and she's made it clear that she makes a clear separation between fucking, kissing, and everything else she did. Like fucking, kissing would warrant all of this, but not really her dishonesty. I love how both are talking about how nothing happened. Like, really? Anyway, it got bad. She sent me a video saying her name and her ID, and that she was transferring ownership of the car to me. I could see some stuff in the background, but nothing that allowed me to identify where she was. I couldn't think. I've seen way too much TV to know people do this when they're actually preparing for suicide. So I called her. We talked for an hour. It's all recorded so I can refer to it later. My goal was to keep her on for as long as possible, understand where her mental state is right now, possibly get to know her location, and to escalate things to a better state that gives her a clearer perspective. She hung up multiple times, saying goodbye, mentioned that she didn't fuck him multiple times, and she didn't fuck anyone or kiss anyone since we've been together. Things didn't seem to be improving, and I had serious concerns about her well-being, without being able to tell where she was. So I had to find a compromise to de-escalate things. I've asked her if she could give us both a week so that we could calm down, and then talk again, face to face. She said her heart couldn't take it. She couldn't take it. We went round and round for a bit more. Her tone changed eventually when she once again said that her friend told her I had proof of her fucking. And why would I need a week when she had already told me everything in the email? At the end of the call, I think I've managed to tone things down. But now I'm left with the issue of what happens when we meet face to face. I know I don't want to reconcile. I know meeting face to face is unlikely to change things given how little she cared about me this whole time, and kept blaming it on her stress and kept diminishing her actions. I think I might arrange for a mediated meeting, but with a therapist, maybe, however long that session might be. I'm not sure if that's possible, and that's where we will go through the facts. Also, not sure if a therapist can do that given that their role is to heal, etc., but someone else will need to be there, even if it's her friend, so that she feels more secured. If that's how we do it, I will record everything. I just can't let a week pass to tell her again that we won't talk face to face. That's just gonna get her off the rails again. I'm hoping that she'll have time to gather her thoughts and come through completely. But at the same time, I don't think she'll admit to anything that can't be proved, at which point, I might ask her to take a polygraph. Edit 11. My friend told me their interaction of only if you're going to sleep and not cause any trouble kinda means that he had been trouble before. However, according to her recount, the night before when he actually went for the book, he only stayed for 5 minutes and they only hugged. Also, her description of the night when she sent that message is that he went there, sat on the bed, they talked for half an hour and he went away. These two things cannot exist in the same truth. Not a chance. Yes, I do know that this is beyond needing the full truth on my side, but I fear that if I don't, she won't snap out of the illusion that what she did is not so bad and that can be forgiven because I'm her whole life. Edit 12. Call V. She admitted someone knocked at the door. I asked why did she let them in. She says she didn't let them in. I asked if that person didn't go in the room, and she eventually said yes, but that she didn't let them in. Eventually the person went in and out. I asked how long did they stay. She started accusing me of disturbing her in her vacation. I couldn't get too far beyond realizing she's covering for my wife, and someone did go in. At one point she said that she's not responsible for what they did in the room, and then she said nothing happened. She eventually tried to excuse herself saying that she didn't understand my English word, and this was about a room break-in. Edit 13. Asked wife about a detailed recount of the events if she cares about me trusting her. She sends me something even less detailed than the initial email, with just the same broad details. Eventually she called, admitted to flirting with Kay at one of the first work events she went to, a month or so ago. She admitted to flirting with Kay when we all went out. This was after I confronted her with all the facts, that there's no way she would just invite this guy to her room with no other thoughts or intentions unless she had something prior going on. She keeps insisting on room 3, but can't explain why V let Kay in. She now admits that she was also with him during sauna time, and that she previously lied about that too. I'm starting to think that I'm in the presence of something pathological. This is not normal. She told me these things with a straight face and could not apologize for lying yet again, nor showed any remorse. I can't be someone else's psychologist. But if she does indeed have some sort of disorder that triggered this, she needs help. Her support network is very small here and was damaged with all of this. I might need to move out and let her in our apartment so she has a place to stay while she seeks professional help. I don't think she'll make it, mentally and emotionally, otherwise. She's agreed to a polygraph. If she does have some disorder, I've read that it won't produce good results. She's also suggested to go to a hospital to do a test to check if she had intercourse. Also said, have them check if there's any semen in my underwear, which was an odd way to put it. I think my only option to actually know the truth and make her come to her senses is meeting with her face to face, with her friend present. Ask her to see her phone if she wants our trust to rebuild. Send a text to Kay pretending to be her saying that she's with me and that I'm saying I will denounce him to the company for sexual assault due to that first night. And she doesn't know what to do, and wait, this doesn't feel right though. It doesn't feel like me at all. I am truly convinced I will not be able to continue this relationship. But she's a human being I've cared for a lot in the past, who might need help, and I feel like my hands are tied. We can't get back together, yet she doesn't have anyone else here who can help her. The only option is for her to go back home. Summary. Wife went on a work trip abroad with coworker, invited coworker multiple times to her room, denied everything. I threatened divorce, she admitted, but to a much different version of facts. Nav for update below. Hey everyone. I tried posting this from my other account because I was on my phone and I really needed to share this with y'all, but it got filtered out by bots. Sorry for taking so long to update y'all. Since my last update, we kept going back and forth. I tried pressing for more details. She kept denying, crying, saying that she's sorry, that she cheated, she lied, she was a piece of shit, she would do everything for us to be together again, she would beg. I went down 2 holes in my belt this last week. I guess I'll finally have a 6-pack. So I decided Monday was going to be self-care day. I went for lunch to a small village next to where I was staying, with no plans, and I was drawn to the scent of wood oven cooked bread and food, and I went in and sat down. Only 2 tables inside. The other one had 3 old ladies, taking their time eating and talking. A neighbor came by. They chatted. It made me smile for the first time in a bit. Reminded me of how simple things can be. Then I went for a massage. Possible the most transformational massage I've ever had. The knot in my stomach was gone. My mind was a bit clearer. Then I went back to the hotel because she had sent me an email with detailed timelines earlier that day, and I hadn't read it yet. I sit down at the bar, get myself a virgin pina colada. I read the email. It detailed so many aspects and checkpoints of her day, including who she took an Uber with, when she went to the bathroom, stuff like that. But the details on what mattered were the same. And somehow she didn't seem to remember at which point she called me, or when she told me she was going to sleep. This is where it became excruciatingly clear. There's no coming back from this. I still tried, y'all. I sent her an email with all 3 versions of increasing admission of initiation, responsibility, nothing else, and she brushed it off as these are the things I remember, and I just remembered other details. I asked to meet her the next day, and her best friend should be there. NC was hard. We kept talking. I kept asking why V would open the door for someone if there had been no talk, no signs, nothing. Asked if they hadn't talked in the morning. She told me V said K said she called me. She then told me V was hitting on him, sat on his lap at the sauna, and V might have, though it was for her. I eventually did something which I considered to have gone a little too far, but I was having anti-harassment training at work and it was so appropriate it seemed like the universe was laughing at me. I told her if K had actually gone into her bed uninvited and V opened the door for him, this was a case for sexual harassment, assault, and would have to be investigated. She backed off a bit with the begging and the apologies. Later my wife sent me a screen cap of a message she sent V saying, "I'm sorry to do this, but I need your answer about something." V said she was unreachable at the moment. Then moments later my wife sends me another screen cap where V says, "I was shocked by your husband's call and you involving me into something I have no relation to at all. Please stop it." I genuinely cried when I saw this. I think she sent me this because she was preparing a how dare you before it all sank in. I told her that yes, I talked to V and that's why I asked her to keep V out of this. My wife said she'd keep her out of it and wouldn't ask her anything else. I knew meeting my wife in person was going to be hard, but I had to tell her how she made me feel in person. And I wanted to give her one last chance to say something. Anything. I wrote a text because I knew I couldn't go by memory. And if I went by heart, I would be too hard on her. So I zoomed out, told her what I went through, the damage it caused, the pain that lingers, the scars it will leave. She left. Her friend stayed. Her friend asked me if she had lied like this before. I thought she was going for the this is out of character approach. But no. She tells me she knows how good of a liar she is. She gave me a possible explanation of where it stems from. She believes in self-development and so do I. I told her about my ex. I told her about why I can't possibly ever go back to it. She told me my wife lied and told her 2 different versions about what happened and it made me cry. I'm glad she's here for her. Later that night my wife sent me another series of texts which implied her self-deleting, asking me to send stuff to her parents, to send her my bank account info so she can send me everything. Then later she told me she'd talk to my lawyers today. I told her I couldn't deal with all she wrote me and I would read it today. Today she told me that it was okay, that I should focus on work. Then asked me how work is going, if I want to share. She sent me an email recounting our history and every place she failed me by not being enough. I had to fight hard to hold back tears at the coffee shop. She invited me to a shared iCloud album titled Love. Haven't accepted. I now understand why NC is important. I'll have to endure this. I won't be swayed. I read the texts between her and K often because I have a tendency to forget and let go. And I need to remind myself that this happened, that it was real, and I know what she's going through now is legit, but so is what I went and am going through. Y'all will say this isn't healthy, but it's how I know how to deal with it right now. Thank you for staying with me this whole time. I couldn't have done this without you all. There will be days when I'll doubt my decision, and I'll come back to this crazy soap opera and your words of advice, encouragement, and support. Now for update. Hey everyone. I know I said I didn't care about the truth, but the fact is these things randomly pop up in my head when I least expect, and I go down the rabbit hole. I need them to remind me that all of this was real, and she can't sway me into thinking this wasn't premeditated and it was work stress, etc. This time, the rabbit hole might have been the most productive one yet. Some of you might recall one of the convos from the original post between my wife and Kay, the convo about the book and gum. Wife, where's your book? Kay, is it there? Wife, maybe. Kay, you can deliver it in my room. Wife, bad idea. Kay, I said you can. Kay, I didn't know how good the idea was. Kay, the book is here already. Wife, glad you've got it already. Kay, unless you want to give other book. Wife, although I think your gum is here still. Wife, I only have mine and I need to read it first. Kay, yeah, it is. Kay, maybe I need some gum now. Wife, only if you're going to sleep and not cause any trouble. Kay, I'm going to sleep for sure. Wife, go get your gum. Kay, open the door. I said there were two sentences I could not stop thinking about it because they don't make grammatical sense given the context. I think it was Udel4222 who said sometimes in these coded convos, there will be things that don't make sense. Now here's the thing. She told me he went there the night before this convo, but that she had his book in her backpack because it didn't fit on his, and he went there to get the book, and he was only there for 5 minutes. She also said she doesn't remember when she told me she was going to sleep. But in a separate convo, she says she only told me she had arrived at the hotel 15 minutes after she actually did. Now I know that I wrote her asking if she was still out 15 minutes after she arrived at the hotel. But she only called me 5 minutes later. I thought that the book is here already and glad you've got it already exchange was weird. Because if he did go there the previous night to get his book back, the already doesn't make sense. So here's what I'm very much convinced happened. He lost the book. There is no book legitimately. That's the excuse he used the night before this convo. That's why the following night she asks where's your book? The is it there and maybe are obviously teasing. But this is more in line with him getting out of her room after she says my husband wrote me. I need to call him and then someone catching him. Because they went up to the room as soon as they got to the hotel so they wouldn't be seen. And the other coworkers took longer, and that's the excuse he used. He was looking for his book. Not I went to get a book because he's coming out empty-handed. So then the following day, he says the book is here already as in, he found it already. Her reply now makes sense too, from that perspective. Glad you've got it already, as in, glad you found it already. Everything in this message is way more literal than we initially thought. And as such, gum is not an excuse. It's actual gum he left there the night before. Hence, here still. This explains two things. The red marks in her neck, all the way down to in between her breasts, and the fact that there were no messages from the previous night whatsoever. Also, in the meantime, she admitted that the night of this convo, he stayed longer than 30 minutes, and they fell asleep on the bed. I added those details on a reply here. The last email I sent my wife was a fuck you. I thought that would be the end of it, and I would finally go and see. The following day she went to talk to my lawyer. I think she sent me a couple more emotional emails that day, talking about how she feels and what she's losing. That night I decided to go out with my friends. I had a bit too much to drink, went to a club and stayed there maybe 10 minutes before I had a small panic attack and had to go back home. Then I woke up to a dream where we were together, crying. I was asking her about the truth and she wouldn't tell me. I stayed in bed crying for a good 15 minutes. I don't think I've ever been swept by such sadness, disappointment, and other feelings I don't have words for yet. So I sent her an email. I told her about the dream, about how much I missed her throughout my day. I told her I thought she loved me, but she still wasn't telling me the whole truth. She lied, she manipulated me, she gaslit me, and my mind is shattered because it can't hold these two realities. I told her that I hoped she'd find the attention, fun, and everything else she needed with her AP or with someone else. That I hoped she'd build a home with them and have the beautiful children she's wanted for so long. That I hoped she'd be so successful in her career she could retire early and travel the world. I wished her all the best in the world, because unlike what she thinks, I don't hate her, I love her from the bottom of my heart. And that's why we couldn't be together, because I'd make myself vulnerable again, get hurt again, get lied to again. And I simply can't handle that kind of pain ever again. I'm not drinking again anytime soon. She replied back asking to meet in person so she could tell me the truth. I agreed. She had gone to a different city where her best friend is living, so she had to take a train, then book a hotel and go back the next day. She asked to meet at the hotel room. I knew it was a bad idea, but I knew talking in public wouldn't allow us both to say what we wanted to say, and I also knew I could protect myself, so I agreed. I'm sure by now you've understood I'm a burning his hand in the stove to see if it's hot kinda guy. I knew I was not going to take her back, because I couldn't think of anything she could tell me at this point that could change my mind and how I felt about the whole thing. Keep in mind that she's shown very little concern or compassion for me this whole time. I knew that she was unlikely to tell me the whole truth, and even though I had a few new questions about certain details, I wasn't expecting her to reply with something that made sense. But I still hoped, deep down, that a miracle happened and she'd give me something that would allow me to close this and move forward. In the meantime, my lawyer sends me an email detailing their meeting and says that she insisted on knowing the details of what I knew. Weird. So yesterday, before I entered the hotel, I started recording video so that I had proof of what happened in the room and where I went after. My whole day is accounted for. I go inside, tell her this is her time, so she can tell me the truth. But if she starts raising her voice or lies, I will leave and she'll never hear from me again. She starts telling me about her days in detail. I tell her I only care about the parts where she met him. She's staring at my eyes, doesn't blink the whole time. After each set of sentences she pauses, as if she was probing me for a reaction to what she had just said. I ask her a few questions. She keeps going. I ask a few more questions. She contradicts things she said before. I double down on those questions before realizing that it's not worth it because I don't know the answer either, so I can't just exit the room. I tell her sure, we'll get back to it. We get to her retelling of the final night. I ask her how does a guy go to her room and fall asleep on her bed, given that the room is cold, and how do you just fall asleep if you were previously sitting on the bed talking? I ask her what were her intentions when she asked him to her room. She tells me it was just a talk, because she couldn't sleep and neither could him, and when she was sleeping, he'd go away and they would both go to sleep separately. I asked her if she was 100% sure. She said yes. I said goodbye and that my lawyers would be in touch. I left the hotel and didn't look back. I knew, from her messages, she invited him specifically to only sleep and not cause any trouble. This was the final, undeniable confirmation she's just a horrible person. She came all the way down to my city, bought train tickets, booked a hotel room, for what? To try to gaslight me one more time, but in person. She's more fucked up than I thought, and I want to be as far away from that as possible. After I left, she sent me a few emails asking me to go back because she had a gift for our cat. I was long gone by then. It was later that night when she sent me yet another email with the truth. She admitted she invited him to go and sleep on her bed. She didn't want to sleep alone, but she also didn't want to fuck him or kiss him, and she didn't. They talked, cuddled, and fell asleep. And then she woke up at one point and woke him up so he'd leave. She said that probably the alcohol wore off or the guilt overconsumed her. You know what's funny? She asked him to delete all of her messages on his phone, so neither of them remember what they actually wrote. I'm the only person with their full convo, and what was made very obvious through there. Back at her hotel room, I asked her to show me the convo with her AP. He was telling her to call the police or the firemen for her to get inside the house, saying I couldn't do this, asking if she needed help, etc. I made me so much more disgusted at the whole thing. Today I woke up, relieved. I still have a tiny knot in my stomach, but my sadness and compassion for her were replaced with what I think is anger, and that's an easier emotion to handle. It drives me forward to move on and get over this because now I see through her facade and how colossal of a bullet I've dodged. I might even call it closure. Disclaimer, this was extremely taxing, and I don't recommend anyone to go through this unless you know you can handle it, and even then it'll be hard. After sending her last email confessing she invited the AP to sleep with her, she went silent for longer than at any point during this last week and a half. I had a gut feeling she was up to something, and then I got this email. It's surreal to me how quickly you got a lawyer, how quickly you packed up all of my belongings, how quickly you decided to end 8 years. It really makes me think you've had this up your sleeve for a long time. How quickly everyone turned their backs on me. You, your friends, your family. No one cares about me. How long have you planned this? How long have you been lying about loving me? How long has everyone hated me? Have I not given all of me to you for the last 8 years? Have I not forgiven you so often, for deceiving me, for lying to me, for hurting me? Have I not been there for your friends and your family in hard times? Have I not loved, and still love, you and everyone in your life? No one gives a fuck about me. The only person who has shown any concern has been your lawyer telling me he's concerned about my belongings. No one, not one person. How long have you planned for this? Where was I while you planned for this? Was I planning Christmas gifts for you, Mom, while you were planning to throw me out? Was I reaching out to your friends to make sure they were doing okay throughout the pandemic while you were planning to lock me out of my life? Was I wiping your tears away when you were feeling insecure and building you up when you felt like you weren't good enough while you were thinking those exact thoughts about me? When did this begin? Have I been asleep for the last 8 years? Have you never loved me? Has no one ever loved me? What is the meaning of my life? Who am I if I've been nothing to you or your friends or your family for the last 8 years? If I've sacrificed my family, my friends, everything to be here, to make this my home, while the entire time you were plotting how to get rid of me from it. I love your family. I love your friends. I love you. Why does no one love me back? I had a feeling she would turn it against me in order to justify her actions to herself and her family. I had no idea how she would do it, though. I thought she would use me liking Instagram photos to imply something else. This is absolutely delusional. And I know this is the story she'll take to the people who don't know yet. It's also designed to get a response from me, which I will refrain from. I wish I could, though, just so that she realizes her delusion. In the last email my SDBXW sent me, she mentioned that her brother knew she was a cheater. All that was left was her parents, and then she would have no one left to support her. Now, I knew this was a bit too dramatic, because only 3 of her friends actually know what happened. But I honestly thought she had told her brother because he's family and they're close. I was further led to believe this because he sent me a message showing support. That if I needed anything or someone to talk to, he's family and he loves me and he was there for me. And I don't doubt it for a second. He truly is a good person. But something didn't sit right. If he actually knew, his message would have a different tone. So I called him. Even though that's what you shouldn't do when a narcissist is running a smear campaign. Lo and behold, she told him I might have seen some messages and I thought she had cheated, and so I kicked her out of the house. She made me look like the insecure, jealous, bad guy who kicked her out based on a hunch. I hadn't told her family yet, because I wanted to give her that dignity, and yes, I know some of you will tell me I told you so. But now I see how blind I was thinking that she would actually come clean. I told her brother then she had admitted to cheating without going into details, but details shall be leaked if she keeps up her games. She's also been NC since Tuesday, but I'm expecting an angry how dare you email sometime soon. Update, not a how dare you email, but came dangerously close. I know you talked to my brother. My mom might call you because she won't leave me alone. Please don't answer. She knows something is wrong but no full details yet. My dad goes home on Wednesday. I'll talk to them next weekend. Please don't share anything with my parents. I will. It's unfair for you to talk to my family. You've already told and involved my friend without my consent. Our shit is none of my family's business until I make it their business. I know I wrote you, sister, and I apologize, but I did so in a moment of distress and not clear thinking. Now that we're weeks away from this, please let's be clearer in our thinking and not continue wreaking havoc in each other's lives. Thank you. I left out an important detail because I was afraid my SDBXW would come across my series of posts considering how popular they got. I'm pretty sure she hasn't, given that her emails have been pretty consistent and she hasn't mentioned any details which could only be obtained here. As soon as I had my suspicions after the first night she invited Kay to her room, I went looking for a pie. Had to reach out to a few. It's not easy when you're from a different country and you need it done fast. Most didn't reply. One of them thought it was too complicated. And this guy with a shitty website actually agreed to it. I couldn't help but feel like I was going to be ripped off, but I really had no options left. I knew it was going to be too expensive to have him follow her the whole day, and it wouldn't give me anything new, considering what I already knew. So I had to come up with a better plan. I knew that if she had invited Kay to her room, she'd do it again. I talked about this with the pie, but he said there wasn't much he could do because he didn't want to break into hotel rooms to bug them and whatnot, as that was too risky. I told him there was no need to break in. We would just have to wait for her to invite Kay, and then the pie could go and record whatever happened in the room from the outside. He agreed. After I sent him a nice chunk of money up front, I gave him the heads up on the second night when she headed back to the hotel. We didn't manage to go through with it that night because there were no messages exchanged between my SDBXW and Kay, and neither of us wanted to blow our cover. The third night, though, she made it really easy. I gave the pie the heads up when she got to the hotel. He had to wait a bit because she spent a while in the lobby talking to some coworkers. Then she went up, started messaging Kay, and I knew it was game on. They made it so easy for me when Kay told her to open the door. The pie went up, and that's the last I heard from him. I thought I had been ripped off and he didn't even go to the hotel and had played me this whole time. He didn't reply to my messages, didn't pick up my calls, until he reached out this morning. He apologized because he had some issue with his phone, lost all of his contacts, and only managed to recover them recently. He asked me for my email address so he could send me the recording. It's a long audio file. I haven't listened to most yet because I can't bring myself to do it. I can't bring myself to hear them talk about whatever they talked. I can only imagine, but I know nothing I'm imagining is as painful as hearing her voice and his voice, sharing intimacy. It's just too painful and I don't need to relive that any more than I already had when I was watching it all unfold in real time. In the email, the pie mentioned a specific timestamp. I listened to that bit alone. It was faint. I think they were trying to keep it quiet because of coworkers next door. But when I turned up the volume, it was pretty obvious. They fucking did it. I prayed this whole time to hear this from her, because I thought somehow it would be less painful. It's ironic I actually heard it from her, in the most devastating kind of way. My SDBXW sent me this long email which feels honest, but also kinda off. It's the first email where she lays it out and doesn't try to blame me. She makes several mentions of her being a narcissist, which is something new. I feel like she's read about narcissists and their traits, and now she's framing everything from that perspective. I won't reply to it, I'm staying NC. But it actually gives me some peace because it's the first email that is not delusional. What are your thoughts? I know you don't love me anymore, but I still love you. I'll always love you. You are the biggest part of my life. No one knows me like you do. No one ever will. You've seen all of my ugly sides, and I like to think you've also seen the beautiful parts of me. And although the ugly overshadows the beautiful now, the beautiful still exists. You know my heart, my weaknesses, my best, and my worst. You know it all, probably better than I do. I will love you forever because I know those sides of you as well. I've seen it all, every side of you. I see you. You have given me so much. You have supported me whenever I felt insecure, afraid, or sad. You have lifted me up from the dark more times than I can count. I was lost and scared when we met, unsure of where I belong in the world. And then you found me. You guided me. You brought me home. The only home I've ever known. The only place that has felt like home has been next to you, with you. You taught me how to love myself, how to work hard and go after what I want, how to not give up. It's mind-blowing how much we built together. Two college kids who didn't get a head start like many of our friends and peers. We built from the dining table. We built from a silly idea I Googled 5 minutes before pitching for the first time. We built careers in respectable fields by learning everything in our living room. And I truly believe it was all possible because we are an unmatched team. We supported one another through it all. I worked a miserable job that made me so unhappy while you learned. You stuck with when they didn't appreciate you while I learned about. There is nothing we can't do together. But I lost sight of that. I got too wrapped up in validation, in feeling worthy in someone else's eyes. I lost myself, who I really am, who only you knows. I'm sorry for that. I've struggled with validation my whole life. It's partly because my family only cares how things appear for others, and partly because I don't believe I'm good enough. I know my false sense of confidence and my narcissism would make people believe otherwise. But I know I'm not good enough. I go out of my way to make my friends like me because I don't believe they would like me for just being myself. I send them gifts and overly praise them for minor things. I make myself available to everyone and anyone going through a hard time, usually at the expense of myself. I do this both to help, but also to get the validation that I am a good person, a good friend, a good employee. You're right. When I was struggling throughout the last month, I didn't ask for help. I didn't keep it real or let you in. I expected you to read my mind, to see the signs, so I wouldn't have to admit my weakness. I thought you'd think less of me, for being weak, for not handling my shit or not saying no, not taking care of myself when it seemed so simple. I thought I'd have to explain why I'm incapable of saying no, that I'd have to remove the shield of confidence and worthiness to reveal who I truly am, afraid and less than. But you already knew that. I wouldn't be revealing anything new. Instead, I sought validation for the opposite of what I believed. I fished for compliments at work to make me believe I actually knew what I was doing and could succeed in this job. I stayed up all night talking to Win, broke up with her so I could be told I was a good friend. I guilted you into not bringing up difficult conversations so I wouldn't feel guilty for not making time or being honest. And then, I've never seen myself as beautiful, or interesting, or smart. I know that being a narcissist, that's hard to believe, but it's true. I pick myself apart constantly. Every time we're out with friends and I talk too much or too passionately, I come home and beat myself up about it. I replay the conversation in my head, over and over. I'd put on clothes and prance around you, fishing for a compliment to make me believe I was beautiful or sexy. As I started losing weight, things got worse. You'd tell me I was beautiful all the time, but I couldn't believe it. It's why I fished for it so often. I wanted to believe it. So to be so skinny, so unhealthy, and have a douchebag with muscles find me attractive or interesting, it validated me. It's a choice I made. No excuses. But between the insecurity and the fear, I sought his attention. I wanted to feel cared for. I wanted to think I was interesting, beautiful, smart. It didn't work. No one could make me feel safe or cared for or beautiful or anything but you. No one ever did and no one ever will. I know it's hard to believe anything I say and I don't blame you for that. I have lost all credibility. I did that to myself. But I need you to know that this was not premeditated. I didn't step out of line physically before going there. I wasn't talking to him for weeks or months before. I didn't feel anything for him, then or now. It was an opportunistic mistake, fuck up, bad decision, life-altering choice. If he wasn't there, it could have been someone else. He means nothing, now, then, or ever. I was just seeking attention so I'd feel better about myself. Narcissism 101. I only thought about myself. I didn't consider how it would affect you. You're also right that I probably would have come home and kept it from you. But I also know that we were planning to speak on Sunday about all of the hard things, and I was mentally preparing for that, preparing to share how I'd been hurting myself and putting everything at risk. But I don't know if I would have shared what happened in. It's so unfair that I committed to trying everything before throwing this away, and then I didn't follow through. Instead of relying on my best friend, the best person in my life, I instead hurt you. Proud reading 7203. You are an incredible man, a one of a kind. I'm sorry I didn't appreciate it enough. Just wanted to give y'all a quick update. I've been radio silent for a bit because posting here and replying to y'all was keeping me stuck in the loop of reliving the whole thing again and again. There were days where I barely did any work. On the other hand, I couldn't have done this without all of your support, so thank you, seriously. I've been doing therapy 1x divided by week and it's been really helpful. Gym 4x divided by week. Started going to a climbing gym. Started redecorating the house. Today's probably the first day when I've been able to bring my whole self to work again and really focus. Been going out on the weekends, but I always go home before my friends because I'm learning how to enjoy the weekends better. Been enjoying going out and drinking less because honestly alcohol does not help at all. I have so much to work on myself and to bring myself to a point where I can be a high-value partner, but I'm also at a point where I know that going back to her would throw all the work I started away. Maybe it hasn't been clear from my posts, but reconciliation was in the back of my head at one point or another. Not anymore. I've started the divorce process a couple of weeks ago, waiting for the papers to be translated, and at some point they'll get in touch with my STBXW. I'll update again when the divorce is finished. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this. I've recently posted an update regarding my personal progress under my profile, and how the divorce process has been started. Well, my STBXW attempted self-deleting twice. I say attempted because most signs point to a fake attempt. First time, she took 20 sleeping pills, woke up, told her best friend she was staying with, and they went to the hospital. Her best friend called me, telling me my STBXW had asked her to call. I called the hospital. They discharged her saying she didn't need to be observed any longer since she told them she was already being followed by a psychiatrist. I didn't talk to my STBXW about this, but she called a friend of mine asking how he was doing, and if he wanted to meet for a coffee, not to talk about me, but about him as friends. Then she mentioned taking the pills and going to the hospital, and asked him not to tell me. Little did she know I had already told my friend. 2 days later she was going out to a club. The second time was when she came back to our city. She was staying at her temporary apartment. Her best friend was coming to town that day. This time I hear it straight from my wife in the worst possible way. She sends me a gibberish message, like something you'd type when you're drunk. Then a video of her in the back of an ambulance. Then back here. I tried to get to understand what had happened from her, but she would only send me audio messages of her speaking very faintly or gibberish text. Then she told me to ask her best friend. The best friend didn't give me much info, just told me she had overdosed again, was at the hospital, was fine, and her parents had been informed, which explains the message I got from her dad in his foreign language asking what have you done to STBXW. I sent my STBXW one last text telling her to write me about what happened when she was able to write again. Next day she sends me an email with an image of a digital drawn note in red and blue. I could not make the words out, but this was seriously the most terrifying email I've ever gotten from her. I send this to her best friend and asked her if she's actually fine because this doesn't seem like fine. She told me my STBXW took 3 different pills, like 30 of them. Hospital didn't keep her there because they didn't think it was psychosis. She asked me to not talk, reply to my STBXW because that set her back, and to put the divorce on hold, which I agreed to. They both went back to the city her best friend was staying at so that she wasn't alone. Finally, she told me she thought this was only for attention, and to contact her for anything urgent. Wife sends me an email saying she tried to kill herself and was really close to die. Then later asks me if I don't have anything to say, ask about that. A week after the incident, she sends me an email opening with "in case you forgot what your wife looks like," followed by a bunch of photos of her at the hospital, on a wheelchair, then passed out on IV, then super hot. "You should be worried about all the men I'm dating and fucking behind your back." I sent this to her friend because I thought she had done it yet again. Her friend replies with a facepalm emoji and told me it was from the previous weekend. A few days later, wife asks me if she can have the contract to our apartment because everywhere else they ask for a cosigner and she doesn't have one. I ask her friend if I can communicate this through her, since she made herself available for that before. To what she tells me they had a falling out and my STBXW is coming back to our city. I suppose she got tired of her bullshit. Or my STBXW got mad at her for being in contact with me. Who knows? I didn't ask. At one point, my STBXW emails me about how she understood that divorce was the only solution after everything that happened over the last couple of months, and how we didn't need lawyers and could handle all of this on our own. I said fine, and told her again what I was asking for. Then she goes into wanting us to be cordial and for me to be kind, but she doesn't tell me at any point what does she want, so that we can negotiate somehow. She asks me how I got to those numbers, and I give her undeniable proof that I'm actually asking for too little given all my contributions, monetary and otherwise. She never talks about this again. Days later, one of her coworkers, who was on the trip, calls me to see if he could help. He asked if I wanted to meet or to record the convo, but he didn't know how it worked in legal terms. This smelled fishy right away, and I said we could talk by phone. He asked if I wanted to ask details about any of the days. I said no because that would give away what I know, and honestly, I don't care at this point. Also, I had a feeling he'd tell me anyway. So he does. Of course, in a very vague way. He said it was very unlikely something happened because he, another guy, and Kay were always together. The only day when something could have possibly happened was when they all went to the sauna, and afterwards the three guys were in their room. And Kay said he was going to my STBXW's room to see if they still wanted to hang out. But he was only there for 3 minutes. This guy talked for 20 minutes and I said very little. But for some reason I mentioned that her self-deletion attempts could be for attention, and this wasn't just my opinion. A couple of hours later, my STBXW sends me an angry email about how she's not doing this for attention. All her other emails since have been about how she doesn't think she can make it, she's not worth it, she's a piece of shit, etc. She has an appointment to renew her visa a month and a half from now, which is the only thing standing between the divorce at this point. I had to type all of this out and share it with y'all because I feel like I'm gaslighting myself, feeling pity for her and getting softer. The thought of somehow getting her back to the house until she gets help has crossed my mind. Of course, it's quickly followed by all the reasons why that can't happen. This has been far, far from easy. It's been a fucking roller coaster. I think overall I'm making good progress personally, even if our separation is no further along than it was 2 months ago. If these things had happened at the beginning, I'm not sure how I would have reacted. So to everyone who's struggling, be strong. It gets better. You got this. Last time I updated y'all, it didn't really end on a high note. Most of my posts didn't. So here's something for a change. My STBXW's emails continued after the last time I posted. More of the same. Excuses, threats, etc. At some point, she started sending me recordings of her conversations with her therapist. My curiosity couldn't keep me away from listening, but I knew well that she would use the conversation as a justification and let me do the interpretation without her having to do any of the work. I wasn't wrong. One weekend, she didn't write. I spent its entirety waiting for her to write, but she didn't. A week passes. I'm starting to feel relieved, like I finally got a massive weight off my shoulders. The next weekend, Saturday morning, I'm tidying up the house and get a sudden impulse to listen to her last therapy recording. I listen to the whole full hour. And again, more of the same, victim blaming, blame shifting, gaslighting, etc. But in the final minutes, she says, you know what? Fuck him. And that was it. Fuck him. Well, fuck you. I said out loud, laughing. The weight was completely off. In that same day, I installed a new dating app and swiped on a few profiles, just to see what's out there. Later that day, a friend was asking me how's the dating world. And I said dating is the furthest thing away from my mind, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be single for the rest of the year. I had been on Tinder and quickly grew tired of all the small talk and attention seeking. When I wake up the next day, I have a few matches, one of them from a girl who really caught my eye. We exchange maybe 10 messages total and agree to meet later that day, 1h drive away from home. We meet up, and I feel an instant vibe. We were just going to stay for a drink, but everything was going so well, we stayed for dinner and then stayed at a bar until it closed. We kissed and made plans to meet again. By the end of the 5th date, we were heads over heels for each other. She knows everything about my STBXW. She knows everything about me, to be honest, and I feel like I've known her my entire life. And if this sounds like a rebound or overcorrecting, I've thought about that considerably. We both have, because she got out of a relationship recently too. And we're both such rational people that we've both came to the conclusion that we had done our healing. We were not looking for anything serious, but it made so much sense that we'd be fools to not jump in. In our last day together, she asks me to go live with her in her country. We'd spent 5 days together at this point. I don't hesitate for a second. This was 2.5 months ago. We've been living together for 3 weeks, and everything we felt and believed we knew about each other has been confirmed multiple times. We have so much in common that it's scary how we lived completely separate lives, in separate cultures, and ended up being so alike. I'm so thankful my wife cheated because that relationship wasn't meant to work, and I dodged massive bullets right there. I wouldn't have met this new person otherwise. I hope this post gives you some hope. It's what I wish I had read at the start of all this. Sorry for not updating you all for almost a year. In my last post, I mentioned I was moving to a different country with my new girlfriend. Even though we ended up breaking up because we both had unresolved trauma coming up that hurt us both, we're still good friends and she's been such a crucial part of my healing journey. Not only was she a crucial part of it, she made me see the other side to the point that I forgave my wife's actions and was willing to move forward as friends. When I came back in September last year, my wife and I met up for her visa appointment. We ended up talking about everything that happened in our lives since we separated. Got dinner, drank a bit, and ended up having sex. That's when I told her that I didn't know what any of this meant. But I am polyamorous, and if we were ever to get into a relationship again, I wouldn't change that for the relationship. Also, I wasn't forcing her or anything, just stating how things were for me. We kept meeting up, and eventually we decided to just look at our relationship as friendship, with occasional sex. See if we get along well, if the flame is still there, and if have enough things in common at this point in our lives that make a romantic relationship the correct next step. So it was a building from scratch, not a let's just pick up where we left off. Or so I thought. Over the next couple of months she decided to explore polyamory, because she actually talked to her friend about open relationships and how she never thought I would agree to it. 2 weeks or so before we separated, I dated a few other people, she did too, but eventually she stopped because she didn't enjoy the dating apps, and said that polyamory wasn't for her because of the increased risk of STDs, time, money, and energy management, etc. Although she understands the principles, it's just not practical. Throughout this time, the AP came up quite a bit. I truly wanted to understand their relationship at this point. And my wife assured me multiple times that they were just friends who had developed a really strong friendship and had only had sex once while drunk, so she didn't remember much. And I truly believed it, because I knew that, in order for this to work, I would have to resolve my trust issues. I convinced myself that what had happened that led to our separation had been a terrible mistake, and I was approaching what she told me as true by default. At the beginning of the year I stopped dating as well. While I continued to see myself as polyamorous, I decided to focus my time, energy, and money exclusively on our relationship. I did it for us, not for her. One night, a month and a half ago, while we're both drinking, she lets out something about this other time she and the AP had sex. I lost my shit and left. She DARVOD and wanted to break up. Told me there were other things that happened that she couldn't say because it would throw her back into a bad, traumatic place. She also told me she didn't talk about it right away when I came back because she didn't know where we were at and was afraid of my reaction. I was somewhat understanding. She reassured me that they were just friends and wouldn't do anything to ruin the friendship and had talked about this multiple times. A couple of weeks later, I wake up to a message of hers saying she had sex with a female coworker and it was alcohol-fueled. We meet up. She makes some excuses because they're both women. We have a long talk about polyamory and open relationships again. She was trying to convince me that she could go out, drink and make out with a guy and leave it at that, open relationship. And I was telling her that if she's already uninhibited, nothing's keeping it from escalating to sex, and she doesn't like one-night stands, so it was likely that things would progress from there. So we agreed to a new rule, so that we're ensuring that something is not going to happen, and then it does. Let's assume that anything can happen, and we process it and readjust afterwards. She's going on a trip with some coworkers in the AP a week later, so I ask her where are they at. She tells me they're really good friends, and that they both don't want the relationship to be jeopardized. First day of that trip, she tells me they have to share a bed, because there are no single beds, and she's not comfortable sharing with the other coworkers in the room. Okay. A couple of days in, she texts me they woke up in the middle of the night, cuddled, and there was touching involved. Super weird text, very irregular grammar, but okay. Last day they go to a different city and end up sharing a room, just the two of them, but they're on separate beds, and she uses that to reassure me that nothing would happen, and according to her, nothing did. She comes back. I don't feel so great about this because I thought they were just friends, even if we allowed for the possibility of things happening. She tells me the touching was her jerking him off and him fingering her, but they both stopped because they felt regret. She tells me they talked about it, and once again, don't want to jeopardize the friendship. She now tells me that they're friends who hook up sometimes. A couple of weeks later, she tells me if they have sex again, it'll be sober because she wants to remember and to see if anything else is there. I try to understand what the anything else is, to no avail. They had a BFF dinner, had some drinks, and obviously had sex. She downplayed the whole night once more, but told me that she remembered everything this time and that they didn't feel regret. Maybe because she felt like there were no expectations now for their relationship to have to evolve into something more. I wasn't comfortable with this anymore. The downplaying, the escalations, the complete disregard for my trauma and the damage she caused. Yes, even if I had opened up the space for it. I hoped that by creating the space, she would feel more comfortable to tell me the truth, but still choose to respect the pain from what she had put me through and create the space for us to heal. So I had a limit to set. But even before I do, she tells me that if I ever asked her to stop having sex, she couldn't promise that because they'll be in social situations together, she drinks and things happen. That made the rest of my conversation easier. I set the clear limit that I don't feel comfortable about them having sex, and if they do, I'll enforce my boundary and end the relationship. She tells me she needs time to think. I give her that time, but the limit is still there. Next day we keep talking. She acknowledges her drinking problems. I tell her it's still an option to drink. And if she makes the clear decision in her head, drinking won't change it. She starts replying with shorter texts, and I tell it's better we talk the next day. The next day, she seems much lighter. We meet up. She tells me about how shit-faced she got with a grin on her face, and I ask her if nothing had happened with the AP since she was so drunk. She tells me there was this moment at the bar. I interject and ask if they had sex. She tells me no. I laugh and say, "Oh, thank God, I thought you had sex." Little did she know that her neighbor had sent me a voice message of them having sex. I confront her with it, end the relationship, and leave. She admits to it right away, tries to call me, tells me she would never jeopardize our life partnership for anyone else. Bargains, DARVOs, the whole 9 years. But I don't give in. This time I have proof. There's nothing she can tell me, because I see through all the bullshit, and I can't be swayed. We keep talking over the next few days, and I thought, maybe this time I'll do things differently and not stonewall her, which I knew had caused her so much pain. It seemed to be going somewhere, and then I decided to listen to the rest of the voice message I didn't in the first time. I hear him ask, "Does he fuck you like this?" To what she answers, "No, you're so much fucking better." So now it's no contact. I've set up a meeting with my lawyers to finalize the divorce, and it's no mercy from now on. Moral of the story, and advice for everyone: you're not a fool for trying to give things a second chance. By all means, try it out. But you'll be a fool for not watching your back. Don't try to give it another go until you've done lots of individual and couples therapy, until you see that you can both talk about everything honestly and openly without pointing fingers or DRVOing. Make sure that the AP is not in your partner's life. And even then, nothing is guaranteed. But if, like me, you tried again and failed again, you're only a good human. It's then who's broken.
What a toxic shit show of a life. Dude, what in the world were you thinking? A healthy person would recognize the tremendous amount of trauma in their life and confront it instead of adopting unhealthy coping mechanisms. Seriously, how in the hell did you think polyamory was a solution to an unresolved infidelity trauma? Look at you now. 1 year later, you are still in the exact same place.
Why are you still here?
Listen, OP, obviously you have a lot of trauma. Go get yourself some therapy. Stay single for a while. Focus on yourself and all of your unhealthy behaviors. 2 years of the same thing? Come on, man. No. You really need to internalize why you are so addicted to such unhealthy behaviors, and you need to learn to cut it out. Viewer support is the best way for me to remain independent and continue bringing you these daily videos, which will always be here on my channels for you to watch absolutely free. So please consider subscribing to me on Rumble and on YouTube. Both will be linked in the description box down below. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you even somewhat enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you really like it, consider subscribing to PattSun to never miss a future upload. Stay strong.